Welcome to Soar America. The Soar America team includes Eric, our pilot, who is going to attempt to fly his glider from coast to coast in a series of connected flights and only be the second person to achieve this goal. The rest of the team includes Julie, Tim, Diane, and Tim and Diane's dogs, Peggy and Ellie. Join us as we soar, camp, and drive across America.
Are you curious how I'll plan when and where I expect to fly throughout the trip? If so, let's step into what will be my office during the trip, and I'll show you. I'll do this planning each evening before a potential flying day, and again the next morning. Weather forecasting is an inexact science, so it could be that the plan I made last night is no longer the best plan this morning. Also, I'll typically forecast out about a week in advance, one, so I have some idea of what the coming week holds, but also because the forecast and plan for a given day can affect what is the best plan for the preceding day. For example, it could be that today, if I veer a little left, I'll end up where the soaring conditions tomorrow will be better than if I had veered right today. So in a case like that, I would choose to veer a little left today to set myself up for a better soaring day tomorrow. In the interest of keeping this video fairly short, I'll simplify some things and leave out a lot of details. I just want to give you a rough look at the process. So let's get into it. My main resource for this planning is the website xcskies.com. It's one of a few similar resources that give soaring weather forecasting. You can look at a few different models in xcskies.com. For time's sake, I'm going to look at just one in this demo. You can look at a lot of different parameters. For time's sake, I'm going to look at just one, and that's what's probably the most important one to me. It's how high I can expect to climb above the ground in the day's lift. This is so important because I need to be high enough to reach the next safe place to land, otherwise I won't go on. On the right side of the screen here is a color scale, and I'm going to assume for this analysis that I can make good cross-country progress with an altitude of at least 5,000 feet above the ground. That can vary depending on how close together safe landing places are, but just to simplify things, we'll say 5,000 is my threshold. So any of these dark blue kind of gray looking areas, that's the 5,000 to 6,000 foot range, and into the greens is even higher, back toward the lighter blues, and pinks is lower. So I want at least the dark blue or into the greens and yellows. And we're able to look in XC Skies 4 days in advance. So we'll start with tomorrow and see if it supports a good flight. I'll also assume 240 miles per day in the west, and I'm going to start heading toward the east-southeast, headed toward El Paso, Texas. That's where I've roughly decided is going to be the best route for this trip, so we'll just do this demo assuming that. I'll also assume that if I see wind anywhere at 2,000 feet, which is what I have shown now with all these barbs, these are wind barbs. If I see anything over 20 miles per hour, I'm going to consider that too windy. Now I may flex on that a little if it's just 1 or 2 barbs here and there, but that's my general limit for this demo. And the way the barbs work, like for example this one is a 12 mile per hour wind out of the northwest. So let's take a look at tomorrow. I have us looking at noon right now, and this is a tentative starting point for the trip at Crystal Airport, the home of the Southern California Soaring Academy. And let's stretch this out to about 240 miles toward El Paso. See what the forecast tells us for the day. At noon, it's not so great. There aren't any dark blue or better areas very near the takeoff. So let's see an hour later. 1 o'clock, there's a little bit reaching over here. 2 o'clock looks better. It's still not great on a direct line, but I could veer over here and turn and then come this way. So I'm going to say this would be a decent flying day, but I may take a little distance off because of the semi-late start and the detour. So I'll just back it off a little to maybe 200 or a little less. And we'll say that's what I would do tomorrow, best guess. So let's look at the next day. Before I switch to the next day, I'm going to move this over. I'm just using this as distance measuring. It's a route planning tool you can use within XC Skies. You can add a lot of points, but I'm just going to use 2 points to give me a rough measurement. So let's move it around 240 miles. That's roughly that. And by the way, I didn't see any winds over 20 miles per hour in this route. I'll click through a couple more hours of the day. This is 3 o'clock. There's some 22 right there, a single 22 way back near the beginning. That's okay. And at 4 o'clock, we're still good. So let's look at tomorrow. The next day, sorry. Here's noon, and already we have good height numbers. It looks like it's good for several hours. I think that lift-wise, this looks like a good day. But I see at takeoff, I'm in an area where it's like 11, 15, 20, 20 miles per hour, right at the threshold. Along the route, even at 12 o'clock, there's a couple of 22s right there. 1 o'clock, it gets stronger. Now it's 23, 25. So that's iffy. Over toward the eastern end of the flight, it's not as windy. My main wind concerns are with takeoff and landing. So if I can get into the air before it gets a little above my threshold and then land somewhere that's below my threshold, I'm probably okay with that. But you can see in the middle of the day, we get some numbers up here, 27 by 4 o'clock, which hopefully I'd be over here by then. There's a 28 right there, 29, but over here where I'm ending, it's in the low 20s to below 20. So I'm going to say that's borderline too windy, but acceptable. So we'll say I flew up tomorrow and the next day and ended up here somewhere north of Tucson. And I'm not factoring in right now airspace or any special stopovers. I do hope to stop at the Tucson Soaring Club, so I might swing down here one day. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do that. Let's say I stop there, roughly there. And then let's see what day 3 looks like. Again, I'll swing this over about 240 miles. And right about here is El Paso, Texas. So here we are, day 3. By noon, it already looks good. Let's step through the day. 1 o'clock. Lift-wise, I'm looking at the lift parameter first, the height, how high I could climb. 3 o'clock. Here's 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock. Plenty good lift-wise, but I see some possibly challenging winds again. Here at noon, it's in the 23, 24 mile per hour range at the takeoff point. Let me back up to 11. Some days it can be good enough, early enough that I can beat the wind. So here we are right on the verge at 11 o'clock. 23 mile per hour winds here, 18 here, so I'm right in the middle of that. Right at the 20 mile per hour winds at 2,000 feet. Imaginary threshold I've thrown into this demo. But throughout the rest of the day, so I might could safely launch there before it gets too windy on the ground. At noon, there aren't really any excessive winds along the route. At 2 o'clock, there's a little, I see a 21 and 22 now and then. By late in the day, it gets fairly windy here at Tucson. I'm seeing upper 20s. And it looks like that moves over to the east toward El Paso. So I see 24, 23 in the vicinity of El Paso near this ending spot. 25, 26 at the end of the day, and even after the thermals have quit, which I just hit 6 p.m. and you see it suddenly go poor to this pink and purple. It's still 20 to 22 miles an hour aloft at 2,000 feet. This is a bit of an iffy call here. Do I go for it? Do I not? So this is a day I'd have to make a judgment call. It's close to my thresholds. Just for the sake of giving us one stand down day, I'll just say this is a no-fly day. So I'll try again from Tucson on day 4. So it's noon and the winds at Tucson are very benign, less than 15 miles an hour at 2,000 feet. And the lift height already looks good at noon, so let's see about 1 o'clock. Fine, there's still higher winds over near El Paso, 2 o'clock. Let's go to 3 o'clock. Now there are high winds over 30 miles an hour at 2,000 feet in El Paso. So if I had been tempted to be bold enough to go for it on day 3, I can see here that on day 4 I'm going to be stuck at El Paso because the winds are probably they're well over my limit for launching. So I'd be stuck there anyway. But it could be that I'm stuck now for 2 days at Tucson. So let's just say that's what happens. I got 2 good flying days and now I'm at Tucson for 2 days with it blown out by my standards. I'm now beyond the 4 days into the future that XC Skies shows, so I'll switch over to a conventional free weather service. I like to use Weather Underground, but we're looking at the 27th. So this is our day 5 in this demo, and I've chosen a location that's roughly in the middle of that 240-mile route from Tucson eastward. And I see bad news on the 27th. Wind. Usually when this forecast says wind, it's going to be above my threshold. So I'm clicking on the day here to get details of the day. Sure enough, winds 20 to 30 miles per hour, higher gusts possible. So there we go, 3 days in a row stuck, blown out for my taste. So that's day 5. Let's skip ahead to day 6. There we go, the wind is finally back down to something acceptable, 10 to 15 miles per hour, sunny skies. Now this non-soaring forecast has some limitations. It won't tell me the key things like how high could I get or will there be cumulus clouds. It uses language like partly cloudy, mostly sunny, things like this, but it doesn't tell what type clouds. Partly cloudy in the form of a high thin overcast is not so good. It's not nearly as good as partly cloudy in the form of cumulus clouds scattered at 5 to 10,000 feet above the ground. So I can't know that, but there are a few things I can use this forecast for, this conventional forecast for. It's mostly to rule out flying days, like the one I just ruled out as being too windy. This type forecast could also help me rule it out if it's too cloudy, which blocks too much sun and you don't get many thermals. Typically cloudy days are not good soaring days. Or if there's going to be rain, or if cloud base is too low. You can use a rule of thumb, the temperature dew point spread, to approximate how high above the ground any cumulus clouds would be. This forecast may not tell me whether there are cumulus clouds. It may just say partly cloudy, but it can tell me roughly if there were cumulus clouds, at what height would they be, and if I see that that's too low, then I could rule the day out because of that. So here's a day, this is our day 6 now, that it meets the wind threshold and it's sunny, so there are no clouds, but let me apply that temperature dew point rule and see if there were clouds, how high would they be. And the rule is you take the difference between the temperature and the dew point, so in this case it's about 50 degrees, and you divide that by 4.4, and I'm talking all in Fahrenheit degrees here, so 50 divided by 4.4. If there were cumulus clouds, they would be 11,000 feet above the ground. So I don't see rain, I don't see wind, I don't see too much cloud cover, and I see nothing to indicate if there were cumulus clouds, they'd be too low. So I can't rule out this day, so I'm going to put this down as a maybe and say that maybe I could fly the 240 miles to the west side of El Paso on this day, day 6. And then finally for day 7, let's start turning a little to the north, eventually aiming for roughly Little Rock. And I'll pick another town about halfway down this 240 mile stretch. The forecast for here is mostly sunny. Again, I don't know. Does that mean cumulus? Just can't know. With winds north, so that's a little bit of a headwind component, mostly a crosswind at 10 to 20 miles per hour. That's iffy on the 2,000 foot winds being over 20 miles per hour. There's a good chance they will be, but I'm going to just assess this day as if I could get into the air before it's that strong and land somewhere where it's not terribly windy, especially not a high crosswind. The winds you see in here, by the way, are surface winds, so they're always going to be lower, almost always going to be lower than the 2,000 foot winds. So winds could be an issue on that day, but I'm going to go with it. Cloud cover, not an issue. It's sunny to mostly sunny. Rain, I see no chance of rain, and let's see if cloud base could be too low. Again, we have about a 50-degree spread between the temperature and dew point, so if we just did that math and know that, no, if there are cumulus, they won't be too low. So I might take a little off the forecast distance for today because of the crosswind, and might say that maybe I end up in Hobbs, New Mexico, home of the Soaring Society of America. So there's our 7-day forecast. 2 days flying, 3 days waiting for the wind to stop blowing so hard, then 2 more days flying, and that leaves a half to 2/3 of the country to go. Well, there you have it. A rough look at how I plan when and where to fly. If you want to know when and where I plan to fly next, just check out our website. And if we're in your area and you get the chance, come see us at the airport. See you soon.